When we think of the Sasquatch, the popular imagination immediately drifts to the Pacific Northwest. We visualize the rain-soaked fir forests of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. We think of the Patterson-Gimlin film. But there is a secret kept by the researchers of North America. The most aggressive, the most varied, and perhaps the most terrifying encounters do not happen in the West. They happen in the ancient, rolling spine of the East. They happen in the Appalachians. To understand the Appalachian Bigfoot, often referred to locally as the wood booger, the Yahoo, or simply the hairy man, we must first understand the stage upon which this mystery plays out. Geologically, the Appalachians are not like the Rockies. The Rockies are young, jagged, and rebellious. The Appalachians are old. They are the oldest mountain range on the North American continent, formed roughly 480 million years ago. They have been worn down by time, wind, and rain into a labyrinth of deep, V-shaped hollers, limestone cave systems, and ridges so steep that they create what biologists call microclimates. This topography creates a paradox. The east coast of the United States is one of the most populated regions on Earth. Yet, running directly through its backyard is a strip of wilderness that is effectively impenetrable. We call it the Green Wall. Between the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee and the Shenandoah in Virginia, there are rhododendron thickets locally known as hells that are so dense a man cannot walk through them. You have to crawl. Satellite imagery cannot penetrate this canopy. Thermal imaging is scattered by the density of the foliage. It is the perfect biological fortress. If a relict hominid species, a population of Gigantopithecus, or perhaps a surviving branch of Paranthropus, migrated across the Bering Land Bridge and moved east, the Appalachians would offer them something the Rockies could not. Year-round cover, a massive abundance of white-tailed deer for protein, and thousands of miles of limestone caves for shelter. The skeptics ask, if they are there, why didn't the early settlers find them? The answer is disturbing. They did. The history of the Appalachian Bigfoot does not begin with the internet. It begins with the frontiersmen. The most famous account involves the legendary pioneer Daniel Boone. In the late 18th century, Boone was exploring the darker corners of Kentucky and West Virginia. He was a man who knew the difference between a bear and a man. He lived by the gun and his ability to read the woods. According to a persistent historical account passed down through the Boone family and recorded in regional folklore, Daniel Boone encountered a creature he called a Yahoo. The name was borrowed from Gulliver's Travels, referring to a brutish, wild human. But what Boone described was not a human. He claimed to have shot and killed a 10-foot, hairy giant near the intersection of the Kentucky and Dix rivers. Boone described the creature as having dark, matted hair, immense strength, and a face that was a mix of man and beast. The legend states that Boone was so unsettled by the kill that he didn't skin it or take a trophy, as he would with a bear. He buried it. He wanted to forget it. This story suggests that from the very moment Europeans stepped into these mountains, they were engaging in a territorial war with a species they refused to acknowledge. But long before Boone fired his rifle, the Cherokee Nation had already named the creature. They called him Sol-Kalutha, slant-eyed giant. In Cherokee theology, Sol-Kalu was not a monster in the sense of a demon. He was the master of game. He owned the forest. He lived on the high peaks where the air was thin. He was described as a massive humanoid who controlled the movement of the deer and the bear. He communicated with a voice like thunder. The Cherokee treated Sol-Kalu with a mixture of reverence and fear. They understood that the mountains were shared territory. There were the valleys, where humans lived, and there were the high ridges, where the giants lived. To cross that line without respect was to invite death. This anthropological evidence is crucial because it establishes a timeline. The creature was here before the roads. It was here before the coal mines. As the 19th century progressed and the logging industry began to cut scars into the virgin timber, the reports changed. They moved from legends to news. In the 1800s, newspapers in Tennessee, North Carolina, and West Virginia frequently ran stories about wild men. In 1877, a North Carolina paper reported a wild man of the woods near Morganton. The description is textbook Bigfoot, 7 feet tall, covered in hair, running with the speed of a racehorse. The report noted that the creature screamed rather than roared. It was seen stripping the bark off trees, a behavior we now know is associated with primates searching for grubs or marking territory. In many of these Victorian-era reports, the locals attempted to form posses to hunt the creature. They assumed it was a lost human, a lunatic who had gone feral. But these hunts always failed. The dogs bloodhounds bred to track escaped convicts, and bears would hit the scent and stop. They would cower, they would whine. This reaction, known as canine paralysis, is a hallmark of modern Bigfoot encounters. It suggests that the creature emits a pheromone, a chemical signal that tells other predators, "I am the apex. Do not follow." The existence of the Appalachian Bigfoot is not a question of if people are seeing something. Thousands of reports, over 3 centuries, confirm the sightings. The question is, what are they seeing? In the Pacific Northwest, the Sasquatch is often described as a gentle giant, a shy, retreating creature that throws pinecones and watches from a distance. But as we will see, the Appalachian variant is different. The geography of the East is tighter. The territory is smaller. And this has created a predator that is more aggressive, more territorial, and far more dangerous. When you hike the Appalachian Trail, you are told to watch out for bears. You are told to hang your food bag, but there is no pamphlet that tells you what to do when you hear a bipedal footstep crunching the leaves parallel to your path. There is no advice for when you smell the stench of rotting musk that isn't a skunk. The Appalachians are old, and they have learned how to keep their secrets. But sometimes the secrets get hungry. If the history of the Appalachians establishes that they are here, the modern encounter reports tell us what they are like. And the picture that emerges is disturbing. In the vast forests of the Pacific Northwest, the Sasquatch is often characterized as a shy, retreating giant, a creature that wants to be left alone. But in the claustrophobic hollers of Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia, the profile is different. The Appalachian Bigfoot is not shy. It is territorial, it is aggressive, and it is armed. To understand this aggression, we must look at the ecology. The Pacific Northwest offers vast, uninterrupted tracts of land. A creature can walk for weeks without crossing a paved road. The Appalachians, however, are a fragmented wilderness. They are dissected by highways, coal mines, and encroaching suburbs. The habitat is squeezed. Biologists know that when an apex predator is compressed into a smaller territory, stress levels rise. Testosterone levels spike. Competition for food becomes violent. The wood booger of the East Coast is not wandering freely. It is under siege. This creates a behavior pattern known as escalated territorial display. The most common manifestation of this display in the Appalachians is rock throwing. We are not talking about pebbles tossed at a tent. We are talking about artillery. There are hundreds of reports from the Blue Ridge Parkway and the deep woods of the Shenandoah, where hikers and homeowners describe massive river stones weighing 15 to 30 pounds being hurled from the tree line with terrifying accuracy. The physics of this act are important. To throw a 30-pound rock 50 yards requires a kinetic chain that exceeds human capability. It requires a rotator cuff of immense thickness, a longer arm span for leverage, and a center of gravity that anchors the body to the earth. A bear cannot throw, a human cannot throw a rock of that weight, with that velocity, without a run-up. When a witness reports a boulder crashing through the roof of a remote cabin, or landing inches from their campfire, they are witnessing a primate threat display. It is a calculated warning. It says, "You are within my perimeter. Leave." This aggression leads us to a controversial theory regarding the taxonomy of the Appalachian creature. Witnesses in the East often describe a physical appearance that differs from the classic patty film subject. The West Coast Bigfoot is often described as having a flat, human-like face. The Appalachian creature, however, is frequently described as having a muzzle. Reports from localized areas like Tazewell County, Virginia, describe a creature with a longer snout, similar to a baboon or a wolf, and ears that sit higher on the head. This has led to the folklore of the devil monkey. But cryptozoologists suspect this is not a monkey at all. It suggests that we might be looking at a different subspecies. Or, perhaps, we are seeing a clear case of sexual dimorphism. In gorillas, the silverback male is vastly different from the female and the juvenile. He is larger. He has a sagittal crest, a cone head, and he is far more aggressive. Could the muzzle, described by Appalachian witnesses, be the heavy jaw muscles of a mature male, adapted for crushing hickory nuts and bone? The diet in the Appalachians is different. It is harder. It relies on mast crops, acorns, walnuts, hickory. To process these, a primate needs massive jaw muscles that attach to the top of the skull. This creates a visual distortion that looks like a snout. This biology supports the behavior. A creature built to crush bone is a creature that is not afraid of conflict. There is a specific tactic reported in the Great Smoky Mountains that is practically non-existent in other parts of the world. It is called paralleling. A hiker will be walking down a trail. They will hear a heavy bipedal crunch in the rhododendrons to their left. They stop. The sound stops. They walk. The sound resumes. This is not a panic flight. This is an escort. The creature matches the hiker's pace, step for step, staying just out of sight behind the green wall of foliage. It is a psychological dominance tactic. The creature is herding the human. It is guiding the intruder out of its territory. In 2012, a group of deer hunters in Kentucky reported being paralleled for 3 miles. They were armed with high-powered rifles. They were experienced men. Yet, they reported an overwhelming sense of dread. They could smell the creature, a stench of ammonia and wet dogland. They could hear it breaking heavy branches, snapping them like toothpicks to demonstrate its strength. They never saw it. They never fired a shot. They simply walked faster, heads down, praying to reach the truck. This paralleling behavior suggests high intelligence. It suggests a theory of mind, the ability to understand what the human is thinking and feeling. The creature knows that if it reveals itself, it might get shot. So it stays hidden, using fear as its primary weapon. We must also consider the vocalizations. The Appalachian howl is distinct. In the West, the Sierra sounds are famous for their chatter. In the East, the sound is a long, rising siren scream. It often contains sub-bass frequencies, infrasound. Tigers use infrasound to paralyze prey before they strike. The low-frequency wave vibrates the inner ear, causing dizziness and irrational terror. When witnesses in the Appalachians describe the silence or the Oz effect, where all the birds and insects suddenly stop making noise, they are likely reacting to an infrasound blast emitted by a Bigfoot nearby. The forest goes quiet because the other animals are terrified. The human feels sick because their body is reacting to a frequency their ears cannot consciously hear. The Appalachian Bigfoot is not just an animal. It is a master of its environment. It utilizes gravity rock throwing, psychology paralleling, and physics infrasound to dominate a landscape that we think belongs to us. As we dig deeper into the mystery, we have to ask, where do they go when the leaves fall? The Appalachians are deciduous. In winter, the cover is gone. This brings us to the most unsettling aspect of their survival strategy, the underground hypothesis. There is a question that plagues researchers of the Appalachian Bigfoot. It is a question of logistics. In the Pacific Northwest, the forests are largely coniferous evergreens that provide thick visual cover year-round. But the Appalachians are deciduous. In late October, the leaves fall. The green wall vanishes. The mountains become gray, open skeletons. You can see through the tree line for hundreds of yards. So, where does a massive 8-foot primate go when the cover is stripped away? They do not migrate to the suburbs. They do not vanish into thin air. The leading theory, supported by geology and witness testimony, is that they go down. We must remember that beneath the states of Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia lies a labyrinth that is even more complex than the forest above. This is karst country. The ground is honeycombed with limestone caverns, sinkholes, and fissures. Mammoth Cave is the longest known cave system in the world, with over 400 miles of mapped passages. And geologists estimate there are hundreds of miles more that have never seen the light of a flashlight. But it isn't just natural caves. Since the late 1800s, men have been boring into these mountains to extract coal. There are thousands of abandoned mine shafts, drift mouths, and ventilation adits scattered across the region. Many are forgotten, overgrown with briars, and off the map. The underground hypothesis suggests that the Appalachian Bigfoot utilizes this subterranean network as a highway and a shelter. Consider the advantages. Inside a deep mine or cave, the temperature stays at a constant 54 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. It is warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It provides absolute protection from wind, rain, and snow. And most importantly, it provides absolute secrecy. There are chilling reports from urban explorers and spelunkers who have pushed too deep into abandoned mines in West Virginia. They describe finding nests, depressions in the coal dust or clay, lined with woven cedar bark and dry leaves. These nests are far too large for a bear. They often report a smell that lingers in the stagnant air of the tunnels, a heavy, musky stench of wet fur and ammonia that causes an immediate gag reflex. In 2009, a group of cavers in Tennessee reported hearing heavy bipedal footsteps splashing in a subterranean river, miles from the surface entrance. When they shouted, expecting to find another caver, they were answered not by a voice, but by a low, vibrating growl that echoed off the stone walls with such force it could be felt in their chests. They fled, and they never went back. This connection to the underground might explain why the Appalachian creature is often described as having a darker coat, sometimes jet black or charcoal gray, compared to the reddish-brown Sasquatch of the West. A darker coat provides better camouflage in the mouth of a cave or the shadow of a ridge. But when they emerge from the earth, their behavior shifts from evasion to domination. This brings us to the most terrifying category of encounters, the cabin siege. In the remote hollows of Appalachia, homes are often isolated, miles from the nearest neighbor. For a territorial primate, a cabin is not a human residence. It is a hard shell containing food. It is a puzzle box. There is a distinct pattern to these sieges that separates them from bear attacks. A bear will smash a door or tear a screen to get to trash. The Bigfoot sieges are often described as psychological warfare. It usually begins with rocking. The residents will hear stones landing on the tin roof in the middle of the night. Bang, wait, bang. It is rhythmic. It is testing the reaction of the inhabitants. If the residents turn off the lights and stay quiet, the activity escalates. Witnesses describe the creature slapping the side of the house. This is not a knock. It is a massive, open-handed slam that shakes the foundations and rattles the dishes in the cupboards. It is a show of force. It is the creature saying, "I am stronger than your shelter." In a famous case from Kentucky in the 1980s, a family reported that for 3 consecutive nights, a creature attempted to dismantle their chimney. They could hear heavy footsteps on the roof, and the sound of mortar being ground to dust as stones were pried loose. Why the chimney? Because for a primate, the roof is the position of power, and the chimney is a hole in the defense. These sieges often involve multiple creatures. Unlike the solitary male theory often cited in Bigfoot research, Appalachian reports frequently mention family units. A witness might see a massive male standing at the tree line watching, while a smaller, more agile juvenile investigates the porch or peers through the windows. This suggests a social structure. It implies that they are teaching their young. And what they are teaching them is that humans are soft, our structures are penetrable, and we are afraid. The window peeker phenomenon is prevalent here. Residents report waking up to see a massive, hairy face pressed against the glass, shielding its eyes with a hand to see inside. The face is not angry. It is curious. It is studying the humans inside the zoo of their cabin. But the moment the human screams or makes eye contact, the creature vanishes into the dark. This combination of subterranean stealth and aggressive surface dominance creates a picture of a species that is highly adaptable. They use the earth to hide, they use the night to hunt, and they use fear to control the human population that encroaches on their territory. As we analyze the evidence, we must look at the biological cost of this existence. To survive in the mountains requires immense calories. This leads us to the next piece of the puzzle, the predator-prey relationship and the strange link to the disappearing deer herds. A biological organism is an engine. It requires fuel. For a mammal standing 8 feet tall and weighing anywhere from 600 to 900 pounds, the caloric requirement is staggering. To survive the Appalachian winter, this creature cannot exist solely on berries and roots. It needs protein. Massive amounts of it. This brings us to the predator-prey relationship. The Appalachian Mountains host one of the densest populations of white-tailed deer in North America. For a hominid predator, This is not just nature, it is a buffet. But it is the way these deer are killed that raises alarm among game wardens and seasoned hunters. A bear kills with its claws and teeth. It is a messy, bloody affair. A cougar kills by strangulation, biting the throat. But, in the deep hollows, hunters report finding deer carcasses that defy these patterns. They find deer with their necks snapped backward. They find deer with their spines twisted like a wet towel. This implies a predator that possesses hands. It implies the ability to grapple, to use leverage, and to apply localized blunt force torque that no quadruped can achieve. Even more disturbing is the phenomenon of tree catching. Leopards in Africa hoist their kills into trees to keep them away from hyenas and lions. In the Appalachians, deer carcasses are occasionally found wedged into the forks of trees, 12 or 15 feet off the ground. A bear cannot carry a dead deer up a tree, it drags it. A cougar is not strong enough to hoist a full-grown buck that high. This behavior suggests a predator that is bipedal, immensely strong, and intelligent enough to save food, for later keeping it out of the reach of bears and coyotes. When a hunter sits in a tree stand and the woods go silent, he is often witnessing a fear displacement. The deer know the apex predator is there long before the human does. But if the physical evidence of the kill is frightening, the visual evidence of the predator itself is the stuff of nightmares. We must talk about the eyes. In 90% of close-range Appalachian encounters, witnesses fixate on one detail, the eyeshine. Biologically, many nocturnal animals possess a layer of tissue behind the retina, called the tapetum lucidum. It reflects visible light back through the retina, increasing light availability for the photoreceptors. This is why a cat's eyes glow green or gold in headlights. But the Appalachian Bigfoot is reported to have a distinct crimson-red eyeshine. When a flashlight beam hits them, they don't glow yellow like a raccoon. They glow like burning coals. There is a fierce debate in the cryptozoological community about this. Is it simple biology? Some primates, like lemurs, have reflective eyes, or is it something else? Some witnesses claim the eyes don't just reflect light, they emit light. They claim to see red orbs glowing in total darkness, where there is no light source to reflect. If this is true, we are leaving the realm of standard biology and entering the realm of bioluminescence or high strangeness. However, if we stick to the biological model, a red reflection suggests a highly vascularized retina, adapted for extreme night vision. It suggests an animal that can see in conditions where a human is blind. This superior vision leads us to the most frustrating question of the modern age. Why are there no clear photos? We live in a surveillance society. We have high-definition cameras in our pockets. Hunters strap motion-activated trail cameras to trees by the millions. Yet, we have no National Geographic quality footage. The skeptic says this proves the creature doesn't exist. The researcher says this proves the creature is smarter than our technology. The leading theory is known as the infrared trap. Most modern trail cameras use an infrared IR flash to take photos at night without spooking the game with a white flash. To a human, this IR flash is invisible. To a deer, it is invisible. But the visual spectrum is not universal. We know that reindeer, for example, can see into the ultraviolet spectrum to spot predators in the snow. We know that nocturnal predators have visual ranges that exceed ours. If the Appalachian Bigfoot has evolved for millions of years in the dark canopy, it is highly probable that its visual spectrum includes infrared. When we set up a trail camera, we think we are being stealthy. But to a creature that can see IR, that camera is not invisible, it is a lighthouse. Every time the motion sensor triggers, the camera explodes with a blinding flash of infrared light. This explains the behavior reported by hundreds of hunters. They go to check their cameras and find them smashed. They find them ripped off the tree and thrown into the brush. They find them turned around to face the trunk. This is not the random destruction of a bear. A bear bites the camera because it smells plastic or batteries. This is the calculated destruction of a source of irritation. The creature avoids the cameras, not because it is magical, but because it can see them. We are trying to trap a master of stealth with a trap that announces its presence with a strobe light. Furthermore, there is the issue of infrasound masking. Electronics emit faint, high-pitched frequencies. Batteries emit electromagnetic fields. If this creature has sensors that are tuned to the environment in a way we cannot comprehend, a camera might sound like a siren to them. They know what a gun is. They know what a camera is. They have watched us for 300 years. They have learned that a human holding a stick, a rifle, is dangerous, and a box strapped to a tree is to be avoided. In the final analysis of the evidence, we are left with a chilling realization. We are not dealing with a dumb animal. We are dealing with a species that has successfully navigated the extinction of the megafauna, the arrival of the Europeans, and the Industrial Revolution, all while remaining hidden in the shadows of our own backyard. They are the ultimate survivors. And as we encroach further into their territory, building our vacation homes on the ridges and paving the old logging roads, we are forcing a confrontation. The sightings are increasing not because there are more of them, but because they have nowhere left to go. If the biological evidence is so compelling, the footprints, the audio analysis, the behavioral patterns, the sheer volume of eyewitness testimony from police officers and park rangers, why is there no official recognition? Why does the Department of the Interior maintain that the Appalachian Bigfoot is a myth? The answer may not be a conspiracy of aliens or government cover-ups in the traditional sense. The answer is likely far more mundane and far more powerful: economics. The Appalachian Mountains are not just a nature preserve. They are an economic engine. For 2 centuries, the economy of West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee has relied on 2 things: extracting coal from the ground and cutting timber from the forests. Consider the legal ramifications of discovering a breeding population of giant bipedal primates. Under the Endangered Species Act of 1973, the discovery of a new hominid species, our closest genetic relative, would trigger the most massive habitat protection order in human history. If the wood booger were scientifically classified, every logging operation in the national forests would halt immediately. Every mountaintop removal coal mine would be frozen in litigation. The tourism industry in the Great Smoky Mountains, which relies on millions of visitors driving through the park, would face restricted access to protect the habitat. The economic collapse of the region would be catastrophic. Billions of dollars are at stake. It is far more convenient for the authorities to attribute disappearances to exposure or accidental falls. It is far easier to classify strange calls as coyotes and strange tracks as double-stepping bears. The silence of the state is not necessarily proof of absence. It is proof of management. They manage the resources, and they manage the narrative. As long as the Bigfoot remains a monster and not an animal, the industry can continue. But for the individual hiker, the hunter, or the family living at the edge of the tree line, the economics do not matter. Only survival matters. Based on the behavioral profile, we have built aggressive, territorial, intelligent, and armed with projectile capabilities. How does one survive an encounter with the Appalachian Bigfoot? The rules are different than for bears. If you encounter a bear, you make yourself big, you shout, you fight back. But if you encounter a territorial primate, this behavior can be fatal. In the language of primates, standing tall and staring directly at the subject is a challenge. Smiling, baring your teeth, is a threat. The experts who study these interactions suggest a counterintuitive approach. If you find yourself being paralleled, or if you walk into a zone where the Oz-effect silence has fallen, you must de-escalate. Do not run. Running triggers the predator response. Do not act aggressively. You must signal that you are leaving. Keep your head down. Avoid direct eye contact. Speak in a calm, monotone voice. Back away slowly, acknowledging their territory, but not their dominance. You are an intruder in their living room. You need to apologize and leave. There is a dangerous trend among modern enthusiasts to try and gift these creatures leaving food, apples, or marbles to initiate contact. This is a mistake. Habituation leads to conflict. A fed predator loses its fear of humans, but it keeps its aggression. When the food stops, the siege begins. The mystery of the Appalachian Bigfoot is not going to be solved by a TV show or a blurry photo. It is a mystery that is woven into the DNA of the landscape. These mountains have stood for 480 million years. They have seen the continents collide and tear apart. They have seen the dinosaurs rise and turn to dust. Is it so impossible to believe that they are hiding one last secret? We have paved the valleys. We have lit the cities with electric lights. We have mapped every inch of the globe with satellites. We tell ourselves that we have conquered the night. But when you stand on a ridge in the Blue Ridge Mountains, looking out over a sea of black timber that stretches to the horizon, you feel it. You feel the ontological shock that Daniel Boone felt. You feel the fear that the Cherokee felt. You realize that civilization is just a thin layer of asphalt over a world that is still wild, still ancient, and still watching. The Appalachian Bigfoot represents the limit of our control. It is the shadow that moves when you turn your head. It is the snap of a branch that is too heavy to be a deer. It is the reminder that we are not the masters of this planet. We are simply the noisy neighbors. So, the next time you find yourself deep in the Appalachians and the woods go quiet, and you smell the musk of something old and angry, do not raise your camera. Do not look for fame. Respect the boundary. Turn around. And be grateful that they let you leave.